Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our leading change episode, the Wednesday episode this week with Leigh Griffin. Hi Leigh.
Hey Vasco, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So Leigh, on Wednesdays we talk about perhaps one of the most, I would say, influential aspects of the Scrum Master role, which is that of working with change, whether it is personal, team level, organizational. There's always all kinds of change processes we are involved with. So Leigh, walk us through a story of one of those change processes you worked on, and then pay attention specifically to the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still use today. Walk us through that story, Leigh.
Yeah, so when I came into Red Hat, I worked for the mobile team, and RHMap was the name of the product. So you might hear me refer to it as that as we go through the story. And they came from a startup that was acquired by Red Hat. And as a startup, startups are inherently agile. It's fantastic because you're dealing with customers, and if you don't get the customer happy and you don't get the money in, your livelihood literally goes. So they had this fantastic SaaS-based product, which is a software as a service or a cloud-based service for folks not familiar with that. And that means that they were offering a service that had to be online 99.95% of the time. And if it was down, there was all kinds of contractual penalties and so on. And with SaaS-based teams, you get used to shipping quickly, and you have to have happy customers because they're giving you ideas, they're giving you requirements, and to retain them and not lose them to a competitor, you need to get those products and those features out there. So that's the kind of background to the team that I was coming into. And I was brought in to firm up their overall Scrum processes and get some changes in place to take them from a Scrum bot team to an actual Scrum or a Scrum-like team, because they weren't really set on pure Scrum. They were interested in Kanban. There was aspects of Lean and other hybrid Agile kind of flavors out there. And I took a number of approaches to this because you're dealing with a very mature team for a start. You're dealing with a team that have worked closely together for several years. And it almost feels like a family rather than a team, especially in a startup mentality where they've been in the trenches together. They've been through the 16-hour days, the midnight launches, and so on. And the first thing I wanted to do, because I heard rumors that they had tried this Scrum thing before and it failed. And you really only get one chance with developers in particular to get a conversion or a process change in place. Otherwise, it scars them because your view of the world is the previous project manager now turns up on a Monday after reading the Scrum book over the weekend and wants to run things in the Scrum way and makes a terrible effort at it. And it leaves a very sour taste in people's work. So my first thing was to meet people one-on-one and have a mini retrospective. Kept it simple, 2 or 3 questions. What did you enjoy? What have your experiences been with Scrum? And what would you change about the current team? And I'd done this in confidence with people one-on-one, so I could get a real feeling for the people, the processes, the tools, the history. And I then replicated that at a team-wide retrospective. And it was interesting to see that there was no hidden items or hidden, shall we say, points that came up in one-on-ones. They were all raised at the team level. So this team were very safe, very comfortable with criticizing their own way of work because they knew they wanted to move in the right direction. And probably the most used tool for me is the Futurespective. So I sat the team down and I ran a Futurespective. And I said, imagine yourself 12 months from now. And we're sitting here to take our first retrospective a year into the journey. And you're about to come into this as having the best year ever. You're after increasing your release cadence. We have more customers. We're fully integrated in Red Hat. We've grown the team and everyone is happy. And then I done the Futurespective for the more negative side of it. So the exact same setup. We're here in 12 months' time. It's been a disaster. This Leigh guy has come in and he's ruined Scrum for us. He's after making terrible decisions. We're really hating these processes and we're actually considering going back to waterfall. And we drew up both of those views of what our positives would be and what our negatives would be. And we tried to steel thread them. So, for example, if we said as a positive, we worked really well as a team, we were always communicating and we talked our way through problems. And if we said on the negative that we were very siloed and we were disconnected and it was hard to communicate across the team, I took from that communication was one of those key pivot points that if we get it right could make this the best year ever. But if we get it wrong, it could actually tear down the transformation and tear down the change processes that we were trying to implement. And we put them up on a wall and we talked through it as a team and we typed them up, we recorded them digitally and so on. And periodically we'd review it. And we'd review it as a wider management team, a leadership team. We'd review it in individual retros to see are we on this true north path to what our happy place will be in 12 months' time. And what was wonderful for me in 12 months' time, we did hold that retrospective. And it was fantastic to see that the team had scarily accurately identified some of the negative problems that we might hit. But because we managed to think about it, because we managed to project what it might look like, we were able to plan for it and be able to plan around it when it did actually happen. And that goes back to my talk yesterday on the inner game. They were able to answer those self-doubt questions when those scenarios emerged because they had already thought about it. They've already planted that seed in the back of their brain that this is going to happen and how are we going to approach it. So that was one of my big tools, but my main change process tool and general technique is to get friendly with data. Data is your friend.
What do you mean by that?
So Scrum is based on the empirical process, right? So with empirical, you're leaning towards data. You need to move from gut decisions or something that superstition, we're shaking the magic 8 ball to say that this is what we're going to do, to making decisions in an informed way based on data. So in this particular team, I spent the first couple of weeks and months just observing, sitting back. The team were using Jira, which generates a hell of a lot of stats and that data available. And I started crafting small little Excel spreadsheets. If people are more comfortable with R or Python and different scripting languages, you can get a hell of a lot of value from analyzing the data from your ticket trackers and from the team's own cycles, because the teams are very good at recording how they spend their time from a coding perspective, an analysis perspective, meeting perspective, and they're very quick to give you that feedback if they feel it's tilting them too far away from development day in, day out, and towards meetings. But these insights are fantastic, and getting yourself familiar with a basic statistics course would be a great tool for a Scrum Master to have in their tool chest so that they're able to interpret data and watch for trends and observations, because then you can ask key questions based on that. And sometimes there's no answer to it. So, how is work flowing into the team? I'm after observing that it's coming in through email, it's coming in through people having conversations in the corridor, it's coming in through the sales team, it's coming in through the engineering team. What's our one source of truth? Where's the product owner kind of role to bring all of this together? And knowing when we're ready to start is also one of those tools that emerged from the data analysis, because I was looking through this data and seeing that a request would come in on a Monday and the team would just start developing on a Tuesday. And I'm scratching my head thinking, how can we just start so quickly? And this was an ingrained response for that team, living in this fast SaaS-based world, living in this world where literally your dinner was on the line if we didn't make customers happy. And we were starting with all the wrong inputs. We were starting with half the story at best. And we only found that out by analyzing this data and figuring out where our trigger points were for the team.
So this is one example, the items that come in and are started immediately rather than perhaps thought about as potentially needing to go to a backlog that needs to be prioritized. What other questions did you ask from the data you collected from the issue tracking software? Like what were the things you looked into that we may take as examples and do the same ourselves?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Kanban method and the Kanban approach, and they often talk about cycle times. And we had a very strong flow of work going from in progress to a peer review, to being deployed somewhere for a more formal quality review to finally being merged. So there were cycle times that we could pull from that to see where we were getting bogged down, where we were generating too long of a gap. Because what was happening with the team, they would start 3 to 4, a team, an individual in the team, I should clarify, they'd start 3 to 4 items at once. So they'd start an item and they'd submit it for peer review. And instead of going and having a conversation to try and get that accelerated from a review perspective or sit down with the person, they just pick up another ticket and they'd start that ticket. And the average load on a developer was 4 tickets. They had 4 tickets somewhere in the workflow at any given time. And this was becoming a problem because the context switching was costing them so much. So they could be 7, 8, 9, 10 days in, from a review coming back to them. And now they have to go and reload their development environment, get back into that mindset, figure out what the questions were. And it was causing a huge wastage in the team because as humans, we can't context switch that quickly. Machines are fantastic at this, but humans are not. It takes a long time to get us back into that headspace. And one of the mantras that came from one of the girls on her team, Laura Fitzgerald, she wanted the team to stop starting and start finishing. And we kind of implemented a pull from the right approach. So if you imagine that workflow going from left to right, from in progress to review to deployed and merged, we wanted developers to look at this, and when they finish their piece of work and submit it through the system, before picking up a new piece of work, can they take something that's close to merging? Can they help get a piece of code or functionality reviewed? Can they help another developer pair program on what they have running? And if the answer to all of them is no, then absolutely pick up a new piece of work. But the onus on the team was to reduce that cycle time. And over about 9 months, we reduced it down from start to finish on any piece of work from about 8 days down to less than 2 days, which was a fantastic turnaround. And that was really the accelerant for the team to start moving towards a model of being able to ship quickly. And, the team went from 9 releases in a year to 33 releases in a calendar year, which was testament to that flow-based control that they brought in. And to me, that was driven from stats observations because they had no idea. They kind of had a gut feeling that things were taking too long or they were spending way too long reviewing a piece of code. But until we got the stats and could point it out in very cold black and white stats for people, they didn't realize it. And people respond to that level of data really, really well because it's not judgmental. It's not an accusation or a criticism. It's just a matter of fact. This is where we have potential areas to improve.
And great tips for us to look at. Thank you very much, Leigh.
Cheers. Thank you.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role, we'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.